Hello lads, today we have another piston door, and I just wanted to say thank you for 500 subs, and this is going to be the first 500 subs special video. There's going to be like 3 of them, I think, and of course this one is a very special door because it is the 1.4 seconds opening 1360 blocks 6x6 that I built like about a year and a half ago with Loom, and it has since been broken by the changes in 1.18.2. But there's still a lot to go over with this door because I think it's really cool. And this is the animation. I could just watch this all day. And so this is going to be also another method of me just explaining why this door is completely not fixable in the newest version, because the sand is used like 6 times throughout the entire door. So I have a whole bunch of test setups and layouts behind me, and I'm going to be using these to explain where all the pulses are coming from and why they happen and what they achieve. Each and every one of them, every single pulse will be explained, I hope, unless I miss one, which would be a mistake. So this is like the entire layout, and I'm just going to rebuild it over here because that's what you do. Alright, so the space for this is 5 by 16 by 15. So, no wait, no, by 17. I'm not smart. That's the first mistake of the video. So anyways, we're going to have 6 blocks like this for the door frame. This door frame is going to be centered here. I think this is centered. Yes, that is completely centered. Okay. Perfect. Alright, and so I'm going to do the bottom helper triples first. So this is just a triple extender. And then for the sides, I'm going to have this double and this single here, and then piston here to retract the blocks all the way down. Triple, like this. I'll explain the entire layout in detail and all the pulses before I even get started with the wiring, so you don't have to worry about that. And also include an obsidian right here because it's basically just part of the layout at this point and is required for explanation as I demonstrate. I'm going to go through and build the top hipsters. This is standard layout for everything. Then it's very symmetric layout, so same thing on top and bottom and on the right side. There's no obsidian on the bottom because we don't need it there. And the reason why that obsidian's there is I'll get to it in just a second. Oh, goodness. Bottom hipsters don't have a fold because there was no room for that in 5 deep layout. Alright, so sliders. It's going to be 4 sliders in this door. I have to get used to the 1.16 inventory all over again. Special thanks to 1.16 for screwing up my inventory. Anyways, a glass. It's easier to see. So this is why the obsidian's up there, is because, oh, I don't have an obsidian here. That would be a mistake. The obsidian's up there because this thing would get powered a lot if there wasn't an obsidian there due to this observer slider. I'm going to have glass block, normal block, glass block, normal block, and 2 glass blocks, and then a return piston here, and have the same thing on the other side. And this slider will be used only to power this piston at this piston right here up at this level through this block, which will be there when we need it to be. So these solid blocks in the slider are actually for powering these 2 spots in the wall, and this pulse will only happen when the slider is slid up, so that's why those are there. Alright, so that's the slider, and then to power the triple extender pistons at this level, we need to have an observer be pushed out here, and this observer also gives a pulse to this spot as well. And so the slider that we are going to use to get this is a normal piston right here, sticky piston, because this observer needs to arrive faster, which I'll explain later. Solid block, 5 anti blocks, and then 2 sticky pistons facing like this, and then return pistons like so, and just break these. Same thing on the other side. And these pistons are actually used to update this piston as well, being powered from this block when it's at like here. I figured that out because it's locational. While I was like testing building the door over and over again, I'm like, why did this not power like it was supposed to? And it turns out that this piston has more to it than meets the eye. Okay, so that's the entire layout done, and I'll now begin to explain the pulses and timings for everything. So this door closes in 0.75 seconds and opens in 1.4 seconds. And so I'm going to be using terms like ticks and game ticks interchangeably here, just because that's how I've always done it, and I'm not going to be exclusively using one or the other. One tick is 2 game ticks, and so if I say something like 12.5 ticks, I really mean 25 game ticks in the sequence, or if I say something like 8 game ticks, it really means like 4 ticks in the sequence. And whether or not I use game ticks or ticks is kind of more just a random RNG roll in my head. All right, so the first part of the door that needs to happen is the side doubles and helper triples, which I'll explain at pretty much the same time since they work pretty closely together. So on the closing, we want a really crisp animation that pushes in these blocks first, and then these 2 blocks at the very end, or at the second move, pushes in those 2 blocks as well. So how we get this is we power the back pistons of these doubles first, instantly. And then at 3 game ticks, we'll power both of these locations to push these in at the right time. And then at 6 game ticks, we'll just extend these to get the closing completely done. And so I'm just going to add blocks here and pistons here, just for simplicity. These are technically just from these side triples. So the first thing that happens on the opening is these get depowered instantly. And these get powered instantly because they're being butted on the closing. And so we just update them like this. And then these will grab at 4 game ticks. This one with a 0 tick, this one just as normal pulse from 2 to 4 game ticks, but it actually is just a 1 game tick pulse from 3 to 4 because this piston doesn't arrive until 3 game ticks because this doesn't spit it. These pistons, these doubles have to retract as fast as possible using 0 ticks as well. So these both turn off at 3 game ticks. And so the next thing that happens is these right here get a 0 tick at 6 game ticks. These right here are on from 5 to 7 with a 2 game tick pulse, but it gets blocked by these ones that power at 4 to 6. So these will like be pulling back when this is being powered. And so these will depower at 7 game ticks. And these ones are powered from 6 to 8, but will get blocked by this block retracting because it's not done until 7. So these get blocked as well, and then we'll be powering from 7 to 8 as a 1 game tick pulse because it updates when this starts retracting at 7. So that's a 1 game tick pulse there. This turns off at 6, so technically I should have done this a little earlier. And then the helper triples right here will have another pulse that turns off at 10 game ticks or 5 ticks. And this one will have a 0 tick that turns off at 5 ticks. This is from 4 to 5. So it's not perfectly in sync, but like it's close enough. And also these turn off as well at different times. Actually, no, this one never really does turn off. But this one turns off. And this one also turns off while this is doing stuff. And so this one will just grab it with a 2 game tick pulse at 7 ticks. This one will also grab with a 2 game tick pulse. Oh, sorry, this one will grab with a 4 game tick pulse, which turns off at 7. The only important part is that they turn off at 7 ticks. And that is going to be the right timing for that. Grab the redstone blocks again. These back pistons will turn off at 8.5 ticks. And that's actually going to be a little bit earlier than these, which have a 1 game tick pulse that turns off at 9 ticks. And that's going to be the timing for the entire rest of the door's second to last retraction because they all need to be synchronized. So everything that's the second to last retraction is going to be turning off at 9 ticks like this. And since these turn off at 8.5 ticks, these pistons will be arrived by 10, which means we can do a 1 game tick pulse here that turns off at 10.5 to grab these pistons that just did their pulse at 9 ticks exactly when they are done retracting. So we don't lose any game ticks there. And then we'll just do a normal 1 game tick pulse, which is from which turns off at 12.5 ticks. And so if this turns off at 12.5 ticks, this will be done by 1.4 seconds. So that's how the 6x6 opens in 1.4 seconds, I guess. Then the only thing left really is the slider here. Just pretend there's like this huge slider like this. And so what happens is we can just pretend that this is like out of the mix. The only thing that's, actually I'll demonstrate it with it. What's the difference? Okay, so like this. And so I'm gonna have this blocked. This gets insta updated. This slider turns on instantly as well. There's going to be an immovable present here, effectively. So this right here is going to turn on instantly and place this observer at 2 game ticks, which means that this observer will fire at 4 game ticks. And the thing is, we need this pulse to turn off at 4 game ticks. So what this happens is this piston here turns off at 4 with some block events. So effectively, it just gives a 0 tick pulse at 4 game ticks to this piston right here, and it goes through this block that is currently not being used, that's currently here, but it will be retracted afterwards. And then this will start retracting at 7 game ticks and be placed here by 10. And this is important that this block is here by 10 because this, once this is done retracting, it starts retracting at 4 game ticks, it'll be done by 7 game ticks. It'll get a 1 game tick pulse from 7 game ticks to 8 game ticks to push this back up. Then this will be here and then immovable there. And so this observer will be placed at 8 game ticks. It'll turn on at 10 game ticks, and then this right here will also push down at 10 to give a 0 tick again. So that's how this all gets pulsed done in time for just so it moves the block out of the way so the side triple can 0 tick its pistons out and grab the middle block. And then the rest of the timings are the same. So there you go. So the first thing we're going to be doing is the sides. So our input block is going to be right here, just all these targets. It's basically just the easiest position for the lever. Have blocks like this. Then a slab. So basically the first thing I'm going to be doing is just building the power lines of the door. There's not really too much explanation for it. So these instant repeaters are just used to get rid of the input bug and also make sure we have enough signal strength to get to the top of the door because on both sides we get down to like 1 signal strength eventually. And the positioning of these instant repeaters is very convenient. All right, for this side, I'm just going to have shape like that. This, I should probably grab some half slabs. Do I have any? No? Okay. All right, so these go up like this. This is kind of an arbitrary shape that's not necessarily super important to how like anything works in the door. Oops. I also need light blue terracotta. Like this. And this keeps going up. Like that, and then there's actually one observer that's right here. It actually faces this way. Okay, and then this is just all dust. That should be exactly 15 signal strength up to the top dust here. And then we're going to have target right here, red block with a 1 tick repeater on it. And this is basically going to be to get all the timings for the storages and this piston and that piston, whatever. Irrelevant. This one has to be a lamp. And this one doesn't actually have any kind of shenanigans going on. Wait, no, there is some shenanigans. I messed up. There we go. It goes this way. Keep going. And right, this way. Okay, there we go. Ugh. And this is just a normal block. 4 tick repeater on this side. There. All right, that's the power lines. Okay, so if you've been paying attention, what I said was the first move for this back piston needs to happen instantaneously, and you can see this is just literally attached to the power lines. I'm going to be doing the left side first on most of these, just because that's how I did it last time I built the door, and it would be easier. So how we get this pulse instantly to this one is simply have an updater here and this lamp. These blocks are unimportant, it's just the dust that updates through the rail to power those instantly. Good. All right, so now for the pulse that happens here at 3 game ticks, we're going to have a target that moves up to here and gets powered by dust. And the only way to achieve this 3 game tick delay, so this piston will like arrive here at like the same time as we need this to turn on, so everything is nice and synchronized, is just like adding a piston extension into it. So that's going to be right there, and this is a directional 0 tick generator that powers nothing, so it's not directional. And then block here, and then you can see when we power this thing, it will take 3 game ticks before this target arrives, and then this piston will update the one below it as it arrives, whatever. So the one on top is pretty much the exact same thing, but without the target. Observer facing downwards is irrelevant here for now, but we're going to place this piston here, target. That target's going to be relevant later, and a note block here. And so that pushes this down and arrives at 3 game ticks and then pushes those out. So you can see, if I flick this, everything looks really nice, and then does nothing on the opening because we didn't do anything yet. Broke the wrong piston. And before I forget, I'm going to take a bunch of obsidian and block up everything on this side, because I don't want to have to fix it every time I do something with the door. For the hipsters, how we block those is just grab some non-solid movables. Very important, these are non-solid if you want to follow along. These here going to be blocked. Non-solid immovables there because there's going to be repeaters there sooner or later that will power stuff that we don't need to power. Okay, so now I can power whatever I want without worrying. So next, what we have to do is make these doubles retract. And so these doubles have to retract as fast as possible. So we need these to be off at 3 game ticks and this to have a 0 tick at 6 game ticks, because this piston will, we can't do a pseudo 0 tick. Well, actually there are pseudo 0 ticks in most of them. So first thing we're going to do is the sand thing. This is going to be powered with a sticky piston right here. Oh, there's a sand here. Then this sand is going to fall, and 1.18.1 or below, this sand will have a 3 game tick delay. And if you're 1.18, it only has, or 1.18.2 rather, it only has a 2 game tick delay effectively. So this completely breaks everything. So that's fun. So we're going to power the sand with a comparator here and a furnace. Like that. And so that will depower this at the perfect time. And the way we get the 0 tick is actually really simple, is abusing tile tick priority, because this observer lamp is late in the tick compared to whatever. And also it's this piston that has 1 block event. So I'm going to have this piston, this torch. So what this does is it just, on the closing it doesn't really matter, it just kind of pulls back whenever. But on the opening, this lamp depowers at 6 game ticks, or sorry, at 4 game ticks, and then this observer powers at 6 game ticks, which pushes this block at 6 game ticks with a couple extra block event delay, and that's enough to get the 0 tick to happen, at least on the bottom one. And so we can see that happening just about now. You can see this, this will push back and pull this block all the way, and it ends up like that. And for the top, it's kind of the same thing, but we just get the pulse differently. So first things first, we need a sticky piston here, and this dust needs to get redirected by placing a block here, so like that. Have an observer here, which seems like it will cause problems, but it really doesn't, and that's because these pistons are A, already extended, and B, there's nothing really here that can get messed up with a timing that is on at 4 game ticks, off at 6 game ticks, because this piston is like in the midst of retracting and this one's whatever. So basically that doesn't mess anything up, and that's actually going to be used for a pulse for later. Sand on this, and we don't really have a very good way of powering this sand, which is a little bit unfortunate. So we have to build a whole bunch of the triple circuit in order to get that. So 2 dark blue terracotta blocks to this here. And then we have to redirect this dust using this, and so this is actually literally just the pulse that is for the closing for this thing, which happens at 12 game ticks. It's actually used for other stuff too, but we power this sand with a dust line like that, because it doesn't really matter when the sand turns on. It just kind of has to turn off at the right time, which is done with it falling down. And then you need an updater here, because you need an update. And then basically this is going to be the same thing here. And for once, it's actually important that this is going to be a... actually, it's not very important that this is a one-bed type situation, because even if we did power this location and this did get updated from something, this piston is already on. So I guess that doesn't really matter. So anyways, we get this 0-tick pulse, again, through leeching off of this slider mechanism. So, and this is not going to be the only pulse that's leached off of the slider, trust me. And so I have a note block here for later, and I'm going to have a repeater and observer here. And this is important because this is going to be a more tile tick priority based 0-tick. So this repeater is very early in the tick, and we'll make sure that this observer right here will fire before this one, which we will get from an observer out from that dust, and then a hopper, and then another observer. So the observer into observer is going to be processed after the repeater into observer. So this location will get a 1-bed or 0-tick. So that's very helpful, and yeah, we can actually watch that happening. It should work. There you go. So this will push across, and this will 0-tick, and you can see both of these get pulled all the way back. And so now the next step that we need is to power these pistons from, I would make sure they're off at 7 game ticks. So basically how we achieve this is get a 2 game tick pulse from 5 to 7 to pull these down. And then the next thing we'll have to do is pull these from here to there. So basically we're going to have a pulse at 2.5 ticks, an observer pulse at 2.5 ticks to here, and an observer pulse at 3 ticks to here. And the same thing up here, just the different pistons, same timings. Let me just solid power these sliders so they don't go anywhere. And so how we get these pulses is actually really nice, and is also kind of the culprit of why we need this sand here still, is literally these pistons are off at 3 game ticks, so you could just chain an observer into over here like that, and that is the right timing. And it works the same thing on the bottom. Just add a piston here, which will get updated by the one above it, and then observer here. And it's a really compact way to get this pulse that's at a nasty early odd game tick. And then the pulse for this one is actually really simple. We have a note block here. Nothing really gets powered from this because it's already on. And then this observer is going to be on at 6 game ticks, off at 8 game ticks. And so that does that pulse. And so that leaves us with 1 pulse remaining, and it's this one. We have to have a regular observer pulse at 3 ticks. And now you're thinking, well, gee, that seems really easy to do. And you're right, it's easy. However, if you really thought that we had any easy way of doing this, you'd be wrong. So we have to build more of the triple circuit. So normal piston here getting updated by this note block. This will start sliding at 2 game ticks. And if we simply have a, just place a solid block here, 2 non-solid blocks, and an observer right here, and then this observer will power this block. And that's the right timing. So this slider slides at 2 game ticks, and then this is 6 game ticks. Very easy. And we might as well get the slider to move back, which is very simple. We take an output from this, because it has to start moving at 6 ticks. Then, since this happens at 3 ticks on the opening, we just add 3 more observers to 6 and push this back up. So, that is the entire thing done. You can see it'll break a little bit. You can see this kind of pushes out and everything. There's not really much you can do about that. That is like the entirety of the doubles and singles done for the left side, and it's mostly the same on the right side. There's just a couple of different... I think the only thing that's really different is how we get the 0 tick to this, because it just kind of interferes with the helper triples and top hipsters. Okay, so we'll just kind of speed run this because most of this is the same. There. Okay, so that's the exact same thing. The only difference being we need to find a different way to get this one, or it's just done slightly differently. This part's still the same, but instead of having the whole like hopper thing here, what we're going to do is leech off of the top hipster circuit, just running across here, and then same thing here. Down to there. All right. That should be everything. If I unblock them, we should see the exact same results. Perfect. Didn't look like it was successful, but it was. All right, perfect. So now we can move on and focus on these bottom helper triples. And we're going to do the left side first, and the left side and right side are completely different. Well, not completely. There's like the timings are the same. It's just the way that the pulses are gotten are relatively similar, but like some of the less important pulses and easier ones to wire are just done differently because the bottom hipster circuit is chaotic. All right, so the first thing we're going to focus on is this slider. And the slider is going to be the same on both sides because this slider circuit is pretty cool. So the first thing I need to do is get an instant update using this dust, and this will update this piston instantly. And the way we're going to get the power to this piston is just a redstone block piston coming out from here. And so what this does is on the closing, this will just kind of move over and power it, but this will be blocked. I forgot about that. So just block this. This will be powered. And so what happens is this piston right here will get instantly updated by this rail on the opening. Oops. Oh no. Okay, anyways. It instantly updates this rail. Let me just check for toggles and stuff. Okay, it didn't break anything. Good. And then this block here will get removed at 4 game ticks with a bit of extra block event delay, which is enough for this observer to give a 0 tick to this, which is the first one. So it gets a 0 tick at 4 game ticks. And then to get the second 0 tick at 10 game ticks, what we're going to do is have this lamp here that depowers again at 4 game ticks. And then this observer pulse will be on from 6 to 8. However, this piston will not be done retracting because it gets depowered at 4 game ticks. It will not be done retracting until 7 game ticks. So it won't truly update itself because the observer is in funny update suppression. So what we need to update this is actually a piston right here, which will get updated from this redstone block placing at 7. And we'll update this thing to give a 1 game tick pulse from 7 to 8, which will push this observer up again. With a 1 game tick pulse, this observer gets placed at 8 game ticks, and then will get pushed down by this dude with some block event. Come on. All right, right here, with dust here, power this with some block event, just facing that way, and so that will give the 0 tick. So if I place just a piston here, we should already be able to see this working. And also this turning off at 5 ticks is completely long enough for all the updates to stop to this piston. So it doesn't power during the closing. You can see 2 0 ticks will happen to this piston. One at 4 game ticks and the other at 10. So that's perfect. All right, and now for the actual helper triple itself. Obviously, the most important pulse is the one in the closing, which happens at 3 ticks. And so what better way to start off our helper triple than with a whole bunch of random stuff. So we're going to have an observer facing down and around and across, and then another block here. And yes, we are literally going to use 3 1-tick repeaters to get 3 ticks. Again, seemingly completely erratic redstone, but it fits. So that's the closing pulse. And how we get the pulse that turns it on at the right time, or how to get the pulse that is going to be powering this location, this repeater right here, for the instant extension, is this redstone block right here. Is just going to power it. And the bottom one is prioritized first because it's a bunch of repeaters, and this is a redstone block piston. Even though this technically will power at 3 ticks as well, this one takes priority. All right. And so you might be wondering, gee, I wonder where this instant update is going to come from, because you really don't have that much room here. I mean, you could obviously have like a piston here, but the thing is, that's going to be used for a different thing. We're going to get the update from the line of dust that goes across here, and we're going to leach this off of the bottom hipsters. I'm going to have this huge thing slab there for later, and have dust there. Target block here. This one's going to be a piston facing downwards. This one's going to be piston facing upwards right there. I'm going to have to remove these redstone blocks now. Or just move them up. That actually works too. Cool. And then repeaters there. And for this to actually work, we're going to have a piston there. 3 observers out from this lamp for later. Those will be important later, trust me. And then 2 block event like this. And those block events are actually kind of important. Observer here for later. Those block events are actually kind of important because we need the update to this piston after it's like extended from here. We need the update to this piston to be later than the stuff over here turning off, and that's like 1 block event at best, or at worst if it's like bad location. So this being like 3 block event is very helpful. So that's enough to make sure that this update happens consistently. And so this will, this pulse here will turn off at like 3, I think. Yeah, it'll turn off at 3, and that's completely fine because this will have a 0 tick at 2, which means this thing is not done retracting at 3 ticks, so it won't get retracted. So this just kind of like instantly powers, and this one's kind of like 0 ticks while this is not happening, and then we'll do its 0 ticks in its current state. And also this does not, this also retracts at 3, so it doesn't really do anything, so it just kind of ends up in this kind of state. And then the next thing I have to do is retract this guy at, or start retracting this guy at 7 ticks, because that's the proper timing. So how we get that pulse is from this observer. And that's literally just done with a 2-tick repeater into a block into the input like so. So I suppose I could go ahead and test this as it is. Make sure you block that. You can see this bottom piston will extend first. I'll place this block up here, so the 0 ticks will happen and pull the block all the way. So there's that. That's the right timing. And so the next thing we need to get is this pulse right here, which is an even game tick, which is an observer pulse at 8. And then we're going to have an observer pulse to here at 7.5 to grab this at the right time. And then after that, we'll deal with the double pulse at the very end. So we're going to start off with the easier one, which is the even game tick pulse, which is just going to have come out from this lamp, which adds 2 ticks, and then 2 ticks into this dropper hopper. Going to have an item in it to silence it, obviously. And then just 4 more observers like this. This observer doesn't interfere with anything whatsoever. It just like makes this pulse, instead of from 7.5 to 8.5, it just goes from 7 to 8.5. So completely simple. And then into a block here. That's that pulse done. And then we're going to have our odd game tick pulse generator right here. And this, if you had noticed, is not going to get updated during the closing. So that's why these observers are here. And this odd game tick is actually used for like 3 or something things in the door. So it's very nice. And then we're just going to have, since this thing is 3 game ticks, we can just keep adding them up until we get to where we want. So this is 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, 15, which is 7.5 ticks, and that's off at 8.5, so that's the right timing. So now we can test this again. So there's that, and the last thing we need to do is have this double pulse, and this double pulse is going to be, the first pulse is going to be at 9.5 to 10.5, and then the next one is going to be 11.5 to 12.5. So how we get this double pulse is, again, leeching off of this piston, 2 observers up, 1 across, and then into this piston right here. And so this piston is also going to be used for a cauldron, which will toggle this thing here. So we're going to grab that cauldron. Not super important yet, but it's for the triple and blocks a bunch of closing updates to this slider because it's like butted on the closing. And so this one should be a 4-tick repeater into this block to turn off at the right time. I'll just update that, I guess. And to update this, we're going to have a note block here. I'm going to have glass above this note block to silence it. Then grab a normal piston like below the note block right here, and that will update this one. The block event's not important. It was literally just a way to get the update. And then this observer here, as you guessed it, is going to be powering to here. And if you add up all these delays, that's like 7 observers and the extra 0.5 or extra 3 game ticks, and then the extra repeater, and that's 9.5 to 10.5 and 11.5 to 12.5. So that's the perfect timings. And when it turns off on the closing is completely irrelevant. I have no idea when that is, but a lot of these pulses just get filtered out because stuff is blocked and extended. So there's the helper triple. It's a very small part of this door, and we can actually watch finally how all these different parts interact. See, now something actually happens. So something reminiscent of a little bit of the opening is actually visible now. So that's what's going on. So now this is the other side. Same timings, but we kind of get them in different ways. But first we're going to do the slider because that's pretty much the same. Not going to explain that part twice. Don't forget this funny updater. This part's a little different. We're just going to have straight up a torch on this block. And then 4-tick repeater. And then this updater is going to be facing that way. So that's the slider. And the way we're going to get this pulse is also completely different. There's a bunch of other stuff going on here. First off, we're going to have... I don't have an observer in my inventory. That seems highly improbable. Observer facing that way for later. Thing there. Target to redirect this dust. Just going to go up into this. So there's that. This is going to be the same. And so is this. So that's everything here has been the same. So where we're at right now is basically right here. And so then we need this pulse at 8 and this pulse at 7.5 ticks, that is. And so we're going to get, let's just do the easier one first, which is usually going to be the even game tick. It's going to have a dropper hopper here, if I can actually place this. This is used for the bottom hipster circuit, so that item's going to be gray. Arbitrary 3-tick repeater into a bunch of observers, literally just getting the pulse at 8. Oh, and also that this piston does get spammed, but it ignores the pulse because this happens at like 6 and then 5 and then yada yada yada, and nothing is important in that area at that time. So these pistons can just spam and not have any consequence. So there's that one. And then for the odd game tick, we're going to have this log and leaf like so. And so this is going to be, this observer is going to be 5 game ticks already. And then just keep adding them up. This is 7 to a block here and to a hopper. 9, 11, 13, and 15 game ticks. Perfect. And so that's the same timing as the one on the left side. It's just gotten a little bit differently because you have to do it like that. There's no room for anything else. And then the last thing is the double pulse, which is also going to be done a little bit differently. And instead of using this funny piston that extends because of the redstone block, we're just going to have a bunch of observers out from this leaf all the way up to here. Then we're going to have this cauldron piston thing. Grab the water bottles. There we go. And this is actually not going to be used for the double pulse, so I kind of got you guys there. And this is going to be a 3-tick repeater, actually, because of just how the timings worked out. The double pulse is actually going to be from this piston. And then observer here. And then this part, oops, need a hopper actually. Hopper here, and that's because this piston is going to be moved to here at certain points during the door and we don't want it to power. And I'm going to place a 1-tick repeater right here. And then that's normal because it updates the piston right there that I'm pointing at. And so that's the double pulse. It's the same timing, you can see. So this is going to be 3 game ticks, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, 15, 17, 19. So on at 9.5, off at 10.5 ticks. Then double pulse, 11.5 to 12.5 for the last pulse, and that's 1.4 seconds. So that's the correct timing for that. Then I'll just test this out using everything in place because it's easier than doing it myself. If the infrastructure is there, you might as well. And you can see it works perfectly fine. So we need to do the top helpers now. So we're going to start off with the left side again. And so the first thing that needs to happen is, of course, the closing. And so I'm just going to build that part. And we don't need sliders for this one. We can just abuse a dust line here to get the pulses to this, which is very convenient. Okay, so let me grab the right terracotta color here. Perfect. Okay, so we're going to use repeaters here, both on 2 ticks, to power these. I'm kind of going to be like merging a couple of the inputs here because it's just more simplistic. And then we're going to have to leech off of the top hipsters again. This is going to be a 2-tick repeater. This one, actually, we need a dropper here for later. This is actually supposed to be this color. Grab a furnace, which I should have. There we go. Just put a furnace in the furnace to silence the dropper. Perfect. Slab here, dust there, dust here. These need to be slabs because of block event delay problems. I have to make sure that there is no locationality with block event with this input. I'll explain that later. It's for the top hipsters, and that's going to be like the last circuit we're going to do. So hopefully I'll remember that. If I don't remember that, you can yell at me in the comments for it. All right, so basically this repeater and these repeaters add up to a total of 3, and that's how the closing happens. And so now we're going to get the pulse that permapowers this piston for the instant extension at this level. And so how we're going to do that is this input right here, which is going to be the most useful thing. And we're going to be using a dropper hopper circuit like this. Dust here, and this dust will lock the hopper, so this hopper turns off at like, just throw an item in there. This hopper this comparator coming out from the hopper will turn off at like, I think it's 2 game ticks. So it's just the right timing. Because if this turns off at 2 game ticks, it can update the piston here, which will also get a pulse that's off. Or sorry, if this comparator turns off at 2 game ticks, this repeater turns off at 4 game ticks, which is going to update the piston at this level when it's like this, and turns off at 4 game ticks. So that's why that's there. So there's this, that's going to be the pulse, that's the entire thing. And now to get the instant update to both of these lines, how else would we do this besides leeching it off of the hipster circuit? So that's what we're going to do now. So we're going to have a bunch of block event, which is the same thing as last time. And this is going to be a log. Have a block here, a note block, that's going to update this spot, and then, oops, power the note block, then a target here, another note block like so, glass to silence this one's just going to be a block, and we're going to need some dust like so, and we might as well just add these repeaters because they need to be there eventually. Okay, and then to power this, we're going to use the funny repeater locking trick. So just kind of take that out for now. Place a redstone block here. Comparator. Hopper, you can just throw something in there. And then you can delete this. And that will lock the repeater like so. And then basically effectively turn this into a positional redstone block. And also this one will, it will not turn on instantly, which is actually kind of important. But basically this is effectively just another positional redstone block because this target gets powered by the thing, and then this adds 2 block event, and then that's it. Because you only need 2 block event apparently for this one. I'm not exactly sure why. I think it's like a margin of 1 block event and whatever. So this is only turning off at 1 bed, and this turning on at 2 bed is enough. You don't need the 3 that's at the bottom. Right, okay, so that's the instant extension done. And so now we're going to focus on getting the pulses. These are just going to be normal observer pulses, which are going to be, one of them is going to be at 1 tick, and the other one is going to be at 4 ticks, because they have to turn off at 4 game ticks and 10 game ticks respectively, which is the exact same timing as the 0 ticks down here. So it's nice and synchronized, well, at least to the extent that it can be. If they were 0 ticks, it would look cooler, but you don't have to have them be 0 ticks. And also one more thing to note here is you kind of have to be careful because this dust like sends out a bajillion updates, and you have to make sure that this piston up here is the one that's prioritized on the closing. So the way that we actually get this is by abusing the times in which the blocks beneath it are moving. So basically the timings that we want to avoid having updates are at 3 ticks and at like 1.5 ticks. And the 1.5 ticks is not really super relevant, but at 3 ticks it's very difficult. And this is not 3 ticks, despite the fact that it might look it. Actually, wait, no, it is 3 ticks. That's interesting. Okay, just forget about that. That's irrelevant. It's later at 3 ticks. It's fine. Don't worry about it. It's not locational. We tested this door extensively. We actually had a big locational problem, which I'll probably like give more lore about at the end. But anyways, this pulse right here is going to be on at 2.5 and off at 3.5, which is not giving any updates at 3 ticks, so this is fine. And also on the opening, it's this piston turns off instantly, and so this pulses from 1 to 2 ticks, which is what we need. And then to get the other one from 4 to 5 ticks, I'm going to have a 2-tick repeater here. Observer, slab, oops, and then that. And that's the second one. All right. And now to retract this piston at, or to retract the piston from down here up to here, we need to have this repeater turn off at 7 ticks. And so we're just going to be reusing a double pulse generator twice for this, because the double pulse is also going to be going to this line. So first pulse to the double pulse generator is going to be from this. And then piston facing, no, this is facing down, right? And so this pulse right here is going to be at 3 and at 5. And so this 5-1 is going to turn this repeater on at 6, off at 7 ticks. So that's the right timing. And if you've noticed, this pulse right here is actually off at 8 ticks and not 8.5, so it will break. And there's really no way to get around not having this at like 8 ticks, because this is like basically more important to have at 6 ticks to turn off, and so this just kind of fails. But fortunately, there is a alternate solution for this, which involves some logs, which involves a log and a leaf. Wait, where am I looking for the logs? Decoration blocks. Anyways, so right here, if the pulse is not long enough, you can literally just extend it for no reason, and that's why the input is here is so peculiar, is because we're just literally just going to extend this pulse by 1 game tick with a whole bunch of random stuff. So this is at 5, and so this will push away at 6, 6.5, 7.5. And so this is a 2 game tick length pulse at 15 game ticks, and so this is now the right timing. Perfect. And so we can see that happening. I built it on both sides because it's the same thing. And when I close this, you can see a whole bunch of random stuff happens, which is completely irrelevant. It's because we blocked off these ones right here, and they won't give the right, like, they won't time everything properly, so this doesn't extend and whatnot. So anyways, if you set it up manually, you can see all this stuff happening. Perfect. And then all we need to do is have one more pulse to this, which is an even game tick, and then the double pulse. And then that's the entire helper triple done once again. This lamp is very convenient for the pulse that turns off at 9 ticks. As you can see, that's just the right timing. This is 6, 7, 8, off at 9. And then the double pulse is going to be completely convoluted for no reason again. Starting off with a leaf right here. 3 observers. And then 2 more. Into this block's actually going to be pink terracotta because it's also used for the top hipsters. And if you had noticed, or if you were a very good observer, you will notice that this observer will spit this target block back out and cause problems. You might be wondering, well, gee, that's kind of, why would you even bother with this? Because you could literally just have like a hopper here and place this around like so and completely avoid that. However, this is uncontained. Just by chance, if you place like a solid block next to the door, it just like updates this at the wrong time and then you lose. So the way around this is just to power it anyways, and before that pulse happens, just power it again. So just spit the block out and have the pulse that is problematic fix your problems. That's kind of why that observer's there. And so this will move here and then back, and then this will not interfere with anything, which is great. And this is the right timing. You can check this. It's 5 game ticks, 7, 9, 11, 13, 15, 17, 19. And so that's off at 10.5. The first pulse off at 10.5, and then the second pulse off at 12.5. So that's perfect. I'm just going to show that this actually does work and is not locational at all. You can see these movements here will block all of the things going on here, and the top piston right here will extend always. So, yeah. Perfect. You can see everything is going there. All right, I went and got some water because my voice is still dying because I've been talking to myself for about an hour straight about a 6x6, and we're like not even halfway completed yet, which is kind of a problem. But anyways, so now we're going to do the right side top helper triple. And most of the pulses here are going to be pretty much the same, just like the bottom ones, but a few of them are gotten slightly differently. So we're just going to go through those differences. So first things first, the closing is still the same. And then this piston turning off at 8.5 ticks is already covered, so we don't have to do that. So the first thing I'm going to do is the instant extension pulse. That's going to be a little bit different. So the main difference here is going to have this dropper right here instead. Just place an item in here. And this item actually has to be a non-stackable item, which is important because we're going to have a comparator be right here. And the thing is, this dust is signal strength of 3, and this shovel will also be signal strength of 3 when it's in this hopper, so this is completely fine, just barely. So eventually, this is still the same timing. We'll just lock the hopper with this dust instead of the dust on the dropper. So there's that. It gets the instant update like this. And now for the 2 pulses that go to here, I'm going to get them the exact same way. Then observer facing that way. 2-tick repeater. There. Okay, so there's that. And then we're going to get the pulse to turn this thing off at 7 ticks pretty much the same way. Gonna have a piston out from this 1-tick repeater, and that's the same timing as the other one. You can see there's 3 total observers, and this is 3 total observers. That's an observer, in case you forgot. That turns off at the right time. Then I think the last thing is just, oh wait, we need to have the pulse that turns off at 9 ticks. And thankfully this dropper does that for us. And also, fun fact about this right here is the aforementioned deadly update at 3 ticks that happens with this piston right here. And that is alleviated because this dust is already getting full signal strength from 2.5 to 3.5, which meaning that this repeater turning on at 3 does nothing to this dust and therefore will not update the piston at the wrong time, which is very, very good. So that's how that happens. Then last thing, we can use this thing right here for an odd game tick. I'm not even going to bother counting this time, but it's the same timing. Trust me. So this is odd game tick into this, and then just double pulses at the right time. And that's the last pulse. All right, that should be the entire thing. You can test all these now. Perfect. See, those will retract and extend fine. Let me just block these off so we can actually see the full retraction. Actually, wait, no, I don't have to. I can just activate everything. Like I said at the beginning, this funny thing here provides an update. So if I add these, it should have worked. I'll do that now. And I can just add these in the right spot this time. Perfect. Okay. This should work now. Perfect. Okay. Yeah, the funny update thing strikes again. Oh, it's because this bottom piston turns on at 3. That's nice. Okay, so anyways, I guess I should explain myself with this pulse here. This pulse from 2 to 3 ticks is going to be going through these blocks because the slider pushes up instantaneously, and these blocks will be there when the pulse happens. These pistons will be here, and what happens is these get removed at, or at least with some block event at 2, and we'll update these because there's already movables here because the pistons are extended on the other side, or the back pistons are fully extended on the other side, and so these will just turn off at 6 game ticks, and then these blocks here will be back by 9 game ticks, ready to be grabbed by the helper triples again from their pulse that turns off at 5 ticks. So that's how that works. All right, now for the side triples. There's 2 parts to the side triple. The first one is, of course, the side triple itself, and then this really cool slider that happens. So on the closing, all it is, this is actually the last thing that happens on the closing. We need this to turn on at 12 game ticks, which is very easy. It's an even game tick, so just literally just 6 ticks of delay, and then this turns on. The opening is not quite as simple because this whole slider, all this does is it gives 2 pulses. The first one is it gives a pulse here for the triples to grab the middle blocks, and then it gives a pulse here for the triple to like retract the second to last retraction for the middle blocks. So the first thing that happens is this slider, we'll ignore the slider for now, but the first pulse is this, we're going to have just regular observer pulse at 4 game ticks. So this will be on from, this will turn on at 4, off at 6 game ticks, and basically what that's doing is it's waiting for the helper triples to grab the first block, And then once that happens, it'll grab this block, and then it'll remove them. Then the helper triples will have removed their blocks again. And then the helper triples have these blocks moved out at 10 game ticks, or they start moving at 10. So if we have a rising edge amount of 0 tick delay, which we do have, these pistons will 0 tick instantly at 5 ticks or 10 game ticks, and then these pistons will have, the slider will have a position right here that gets powered from 4.5 to 5.5 ticks. So this will do a 1 game tick pulse to grab these. And so these are starting to retract at 5.5 ticks. These will do another 0 tick at 7. These will turn off at 8.5. This will do a pulse from 8.5 to 9 using this observer slider again. It'll power this spot instead because these pistons will move it back. Then this will power from 10 to 10.5, 1 game tick pulse. And then we'll reuse the 0 tick thing once again to do a 0 tick at 12.5 ticks to sync up the last retraction. And regards to the observer slider, how it actually gets this to work is we have this button on the closing gets instant updated. This piston right here will do a 1 game tick pulse. Very important that this is sticky piston, by the way, because we need this. Oh goodness, where's my redstone blocks? This piston right here, at least the top one, needs to turn on at 2.5 ticks to make sure the observer is placed by 3.5, so it can do a pulse from 4.5 turning off at 5.5 without having to cut it early, because if we cut it early, we can't move it back in and have it power again to do the pulse from 8 to 9. So we have to make sure this places early. So these pistons actually turn on at 2.5 ticks, and this gets a 1 game tick pulse at 3 game ticks just with an observer. So this places at 4 game ticks. So this arrives like 1 game tick early. And so this will turn on at 2.5, which will update this piston right here at 3 ticks, or 6 game ticks instead of 5 game ticks. So this is like 1 game tick afterwards. If you look at the animation closely, you can actually see that happen. And it doesn't really matter when this block arrives, though. As long as it's there by like 5, it's fine. So there's that. And then this will turn off at 6 ticks. And then that will place the observer at 7, turn on at 8, off at 9. That's what will do this pulse. And then this will actually start sliding at 9. So this like observer slider is actually like synchronized with the block from the helper triples, like moving like this. And then this will just go as soon as it can. So it pushes up at 10.5. So it like does 1 fluid motion upwards instead of like syncing with everything else. And then this has already been explained. So that is the main side triple. So now we're going to build the all-important 0 tick generator using the sand and the boat thing. So you're going to have to break these observers again and place yourself a sticky piston right here for the sand. But don't place the sand yet because you're going to need a campfire right here. You don't need to slap out the campfire with a shovel because you don't need it for that long. And it also doesn't burn your boat for some reason, which is a very nice feature. Also, if you drive the boat far in enough, you don't see it from the outside, which is very nice. So we're going to get this boat in place by 0 ticking in this soul sand. And then once that's in there, you can break the campfire, and then the boat will lay on one of the internal hitboxes of the soul sand. You can kind of see it here. And so what this boat does is when we use this sand 0 tick generator, this sand does not break in 1.18.2, thankfully. What it does is it just makes it fall faster. And the importance of this is that when we have this 0 tick generator, actually I'm probably just going to push in these observers first. Oops. Like that. Dust here, then a normal piston right here to create the 0 tick. And then we're going to have sticky piston right here, redstone block here. Make sure you place a glass block here so the boat doesn't get like pushed up. I'm not sure if it does or not, but might as well have it. You can see, oh, zero, out of sync. This sand gets moved up to make the zero tick, and then it will fall back down faster, and that's important because we use this zero tick generator twice in 4 game ticks, not 3, which is why this boat doesn't have to be perfectly positioned at the top of the block here. With perfect positioning of the boat, you can use these every 3 game ticks. Looks kind of cool. But basically, for our purposes, this will not break because the sand will fall fast enough to allow us to use the zero tick generator at 5 ticks and at 7 ticks. The one at 7 ticks doesn't even have to be a 0 tick. It's just as easier to reuse this. We actually reuse this for the last pulse as well, but it's not super important. And the reason why this is going to be a sticky piston and not any normal piston, because this totally works with a normal piston, because if we push this redstone block down with an observer and have an observer pulse into this and have a normal piston, this redstone block would take 3 game ticks to arrive versus it would only take 2 with adequate or with a sticky piston here, because this redstone block gets teleported. And since the 0 ticks have to happen at 5 ticks and 7 ticks, which are even game ticks, it's just much easier to have this be a sticky piston. So there's your reasoning for that. And so now the next pulse that we need is literally just going to be powering these pistons at this level right here for the 0 tick at 5 to push these out. And then this circuit right here already takes care of the, well, I suppose we could do the slider as well, but the slider, what's going to do is it goes down. What? Oh, dude, I love when this happens. Perfect. Okay, so the slider goes down. This block here will arrive, since it's a normal piston, it'll arrive at 2.5 ticks, and then this repeater is going to be powered on. So this arrives at 2.5 ticks. This block arrives 1 game tick later and will get pushed out at 3 ticks instead of 2.5, but it's only important the observer gets pushed out at 2.5 ticks because then it'll have a pulse that turns on at 4.5 and off at 5.5 ticks. And the reason why it's important that this turns off at 5.5 ticks is because then we can retract these back at 7 instantaneously without any kind of delay whatsoever. Then these will turn off at 6 ticks, and what that does is when this pulls back, this will have a pulse that turns on at 8 ticks and off at 9 ticks, so that grabs these blocks at the perfect timing with a 1 game tick pulse. And then also this will start to slide at 9 game ticks as well. Even though the pulse doesn't have to be cut, it's just going to be synchronized with everything else. All right, so for this slider to actually work, we're going to place a redstone torch on this block right here, which is going to permapower this, and this will get updated by this dust right here, and won't get updated by this over here, because that's just kind of how it goes. So instead, we're just going to have to make another part of the inputs here. Just put dust over here, and that will update it properly. And you can see this observer being spit down to be arriving by 2.5 arrives 1 game tick early, because that's just kind of how it works, because of this pulse right here. It turns off at 4 game ticks, so this arrives early. And this pushes out and then goes back. And then to push this slider back up, we're going to just spam observers. Oh, and also we can use the glass pane trick to get the pulse we need. Let's just can't see. Oh my goodness. That's fine. Okay, so anyways, so the glass pane trick will power this block right here. Then, well, I mean, since this, it's just the right timing. It will instant update. Or this will be on when this piston arrives here, so don't have to worry about it. This side, we're not so fortunate. There is much more that needs to be done for the slider on this side, but this side's free, so that's nice. All right, and now to actually get the 0 ticks that happen at 5 and 7 to push this row of pistons out and pull them back, we're going to be using a piston right here, and then 4 observers, and then this piston right here to add some rising edge block event, which I'm not entirely certain is necessary, but might as well have it. And this piston actually gets it the pulse at 7 as well, because this retracts instantly and then gets pulsed by this at 2 ticks, so it just gives a double pulse to here, which is really nice. All right, made a small error here. I forgot to add this pulse back on top. Just kind of a skill issue. So yeah, now that's there, and now it should work. Perfect. All right. So now there's only 2 more things that's left to do. This has to turn off at the right time, and if we give this a observer pulse at the right time, we can actually just have this sort of thing into this area right here, and that's going to do the second to last retraction for us. And then the last retraction is going to be completely convoluted. So this actually has to happen at an odd game tick, and we can steal this odd game tick, and that's kind of why it was there originally. This is the right timing, just trust. I can count it anyways, so this is 5 game ticks, 7, 9, 11, 13, 15, which means this is off at 17 game ticks, which is 8.5 ticks, which is nice. And then this right here is going to be 9.5 off at 10.5, and then to get this last 0 tick, we just need to power this 0 tick gen at 11.5. So how we get that is by stealing the odd game tick from up here. So this is already 0.5, I don't know, it is a very large amount of delay. Need to have an observer facing down here. Good luck placing this in survival. And then down again. So yeah, this is 5.5. That's like 11 game ticks, and then 13, 15, 17, 19, 21, 23. That's 11.5 ticks. So there you go. And so that should be the entire triple extender done, on this side at least. Perfect. And it's in sync with everything else. Well, now we can do the one on this side, which is going to be pretty much the exact same thing, so I'll explain it less, but we do have to build this boat thing, which is extremely unfortunate. All right, there's the 0 tick generator done. Well, mostly, I just need to place this guy. And I guess I never really explained these. This is just to turn this input on at the right time on the closing, and it doesn't really affect anything on the opening. So this, getting these is the same thing. I made this the wrong color. I'm very intelligent. Anyways, here's the 0 ticks, and we'll get the slider now. So this is the same thing. I'm just going to place a torch here. And this postal slider is already done for us. This slider pulls for the bottom piston is pretty simple. Have this go into a dust. This here, detector rail, like that. And this is going to be there. And then to get this last pulse, we just need to build like the entire bottom hipsters circuit for it, so that's even better. So I have an activator rail here, up, block here. I need to have a furnace here, put a furnace in the furnace, need a dropper, and item in this dropper to silence it, 3 tick repeater, 2 observers like this, and then this. And basically this will power at 10.5 ticks, because if you count, it does a pulse at 7.5 and at 10.5. This observer does, at least. And that 10.5 is actually also the last pulse for the bottom hipsters. And also this, both of these pulses are the second to last and last pulse for the bottom hipsters. which I'll get into later. But basically you need this to exist because this has to update this piston, has to update that piston from that block. So that's just fantastic. Let me just, there we go. Okay, so that's the slider done. And also the 0 ticks. So now the last things we have to do is get this pulse to the back piston, turn that off at the right time, and the last 0 tick for the final retraction. This is still the same timing. So that's get it the exact same way on this side. And for this thing, we have to do it a little bit differently. And I'm too lazy to get the terracotta from my inventory. I'm going to add a bunch of block event delay for no reason other than to look cool. And lead from here and then down, and that's the right timing. You need to actually have this pulse be here for it to work. Two readers there. Perfect. That's the second to last pulse from that one. All right, so now I can test that. Perfect. Okay. All right, and since the opening of this door is pretty much separated between everything we've just built and also the top and bottom hipsters, we can test everything we have so far, and it should work coherently together, mostly. If we just move these blocks and place them here instead, you should see that everything should be perfectly in sync, and it is, and it looks great and works. So that's a good sign that I've built everything correctly so far. And so we can move on to the bottom hipsters, which is one of the more scuffed circuits of this door. All right, bottom hipsters time. So let me go through and explain the sequence for this one over here. So on the closing, this just gets pushed in instantly. This thing gets a 2 game tick pulse at 6 game ticks, and then this just turns on when it arrives, which is at 9 game ticks. And so that does the closing. And so the opening is a bit scuffed. So what happens first is this thing, since it's being powered by a repeater from right here, I guess I could, whatever. So this is getting powered from a repeater right here. So this turns off at 2 game ticks. It's done by 5 game ticks. This turns off at 5 game ticks with sand, and has to be early in the tick with sand, because this is a pseudo 0 tick that is on from 4 game ticks to 5 game ticks and gets cut at 5 with a slider. So this is a perfect 0 tick chain. This turning off at 5 is very convenient because we can have this thing turn off at 8 game ticks with just a normal 1 game tick or 2 game tick pulse from an observer. And so that turns off perfectly. And then this right here will have a 1 game tick pulse from 11 to 12 game ticks. And then during the time that this block is retracting from 12 to 15, this gets a 1 game tick pulse from 13 to 14 game ticks in here. And then at 15 game ticks, right as this is done retracting, this block will update it, because this is getting a 2 game tick pulse from 14 to 16. This block will update it at 15 and do a 1 game tick pulse from 15 to 16 and push this up. So this whole arrangement here will arrive, well, this block arrives a little bit earlier than 18 game ticks, but basically what happens is this block gets powered by the repeater, like so. At 18 game ticks, this piston will arrive, and then 0 tick at 18 game ticks, as this gets removed at 18 game ticks. So that's the 9 tick. That's the 9 ticks, second to last retraction, in sync with the everything else. This thing gets pushed up at oh goodness. This thing gets pushed up at 9 ticks as well, and so this piston will arrive at 10 ticks. And so because this piston is done retracting at it gets a 1 game tick pulse from 15 to 16 game ticks to push up. And since this is done retracting at 19 game ticks and there's no block on its face, this being done by 19 game ticks will update this piston as it gets an observer pulse again from 18 to 20. So this gets a 1 game tick pulse. This piston arrives at 20 for a 1 game tick pulse that happens that turns off at 21 game ticks, which is 10.5 ticks. So this is the right timing for that. This pulses from 19 game ticks to 21 game ticks, and this piston arrives to get it. this turns off. This is just a normal 1 game tick pulse from 24 to 25 game ticks. And then these two just retract at arbitrary times because it doesn't really matter. The only thing that's important is this block retracting at 12.5 ticks. So that is the entire explanation for the bottom hipster. All right, so now we're actually going to achieve these timings in practice. So the first thing we're going to do is the thing on the closing, just put these blocks in instantly. That has to be an observer for later, but I'm going to have an input right here. I'll just take this out, dust here, and that's going to power the targets here. That's just going to be on instantly. This observer is going to be facing that way. That dust is going to connect up to here. And then for the closing pulse, we're going to have an observer facing this way. Repeater here. I'm going to have a big slider with a bunch of glass blocks. That's the wrong color. Like so. That's going to end right here. And I have the returns right here. And then observers right here. And that's going to be powering blocks right here and power the bottom pistons. And so that's the bottom closing. See, this powers at, this slider slides at 4 game ticks, and then this updates at 6 game ticks and powers them at 6. And this stuff right here, this redstone block will arrive here at 5 game ticks technically for these observers, or for these repeaters. So this repeater line turns on at 7 game ticks, which is later than the thing down here, so it doesn't get interrupted whatsoever. And also will turn off instantly because this is just a redstone blockchain. All right. So that's going to be the closing. I'll just test it like that. Then we need to retract these dudes at 5 game ticks. So how we're going to do that is, of course, with sand, because that's the easiest way to get this timing. So we're going to have our sand right here. Too lazy to get sand from my inventory. So sand right there. And we're going to take an output from this dropper right here, which gets depowered instantaneously. So that observer is going to be turning on from 4 to 6. And this will just get a 1, and this will cut to a 1 game tick pulse using the sand because this dust right here is off at 2 game ticks. And so the sand will fall and cut at 5. So that will pull these pistons back at the right time. And then to get the pseudo 0 tick chain, we're going to have a dust line here. And don't forget to have a slab here with an activator rail, because we're going to have the giga slider right here. A bunch of observers like this. I'm going to have a glass block right here, piston here, and yes, these are going to be slid as well. Glass block there, and then return piston above this dust. And conveniently, this is already getting budded at 5 game ticks right here. So all that's left to do is have enough block event to cut it. So we're going to go in here. Sticky piston there, that's relevant for later. Normal piston there, so that's like 3 block event chain right there, so that's more than enough. And to actually power this, we need this dust line to be powered at 2 game ticks. And so the easiest way for us to get that actually is have this piston right here. This piston is like kind of crazy. It does like 5 important pulses throughout the entire door. Actually, maybe no, it does like 4 important ones and 1 non-important one. And oops, target there. That'll like update stuff. And since there's no real easy way to get an update like to the side of these, we can actually use this piston right here and this observer to have this dust update this position right here through this observer from a block away. And this always works because this tile tick priority of this piston right here is going to be higher than the ones of this is just this observer. So this dust will always be processed after all of these observers, and this line will turn on. So that's basically effectively what this does is it alleviates any kind of not updating issue from these observers at this level right there, where these pistons are. So there's that. And we need to update this on the closing because it doesn't get an update. But if we do update it like this, this will be being updated by this line right here. And so when this line depowers, this will be power instantly, and then this will be on at 2 game ticks, and then these will be on at 4. This will slide during the closing, and then this will slide at 5 game ticks to make the 0 tick chain. So we can see that happening now. There was a row of pistons missing, I think. Oh wait, no, just this wasn't reset properly. That didn't slide back. May as well add that right now. It's just gotten with this guy right here. And that's the pulse that turns off at 8 game ticks to grab the pistons after they do the 0 tick chain. Let me just put all these here. And then, as you can see, I've had to do this before, so I know how to do it. You can see, 0 tick chain, bam. So there it is. Now we just need to grab these blocks down, which did actually happen, but it was a different pulse that did it. So conveniently, this gives the perfect timing. This piston strikes yet again as to give the pulse that turns off at 12 game ticks down to here. And it also gives another pulse, because this is a double pulse, as you can see. And that's actually going to be the one that pushes these up at 15 as well, to be grabbed by this. So now what we have to do is just push these pistons back in. And this is going to be the 13 to 14 game tick pulse. And if we get this, we can actually see the 0 tick. Well, no, we won't get to see the 0 tick happen, but these will extend properly because the pulse for when these blocks are here is already here, because we have this thing turning these repeaters on from 8.5 to 9.5 from this whole arrangement right here. So how we're going to get that pulse is actually that sticky piston that we placed in the update chain earlier. If we place like a block here, and then this right here, this dropper will be powered at 9 game ticks, and then we'll eventually go through to this at 13 game ticks, because that's 4 extra game ticks of the observers. And then if we have the sand at the right time, we can actually cut this pulse at 14 game ticks. And so we actually have to power the sand piston, make sure the sand piston is off at like 11, so it falls at the right time. So that's an odd game tick. So we're just going to use this observer right here, and this dust, and this log, which we're going to grab right here. Log here, oak leaves, and then to make sure that this sand doesn't break, we're going to give it a 4 game tick pulse instead of just a 2 game tick pulse. Let's see if we do that. And this is the right timing. So now we should see the whole thing going on. Perfect. And then this will just like spam, because it doesn't, these blocks don't get retracted. So to retract these, we just need a pretty simple pulse here, because we don't need like any special amount of block event or anything, because that's provided by the pistons themselves. Repeater there, out from here. Adjust this to 4 ticks, and then this is going to be 6 ticks, 7, 8, which means it's off at 9 ticks, so that's the perfect time for the 0 tick to happen. So now we should see that happening. Bam. And so all that's left is to get this piston to push over to activate this slider again, and this the timing that this turns on at 7.5 is actually perfect, because if we track this piston will activate again at 7.5, 8.5, 9.5 to here, and since it's a 2 game tick pulse, this observer here will turn off at 10.5, which is the exact timing that this piston right up here will need to grab this guy down from right here. So that's perfect. And then the last pulse, as I've mentioned before, comes from this again, because this powers at 7.5. This repeater here powers at 7.5 and 10.5 ticks, and so this will power at 11.5 ticks and off at 12.5 ticks. So that's the right timing for that. And then this second pulse to this will update that yet again, and then just pull these down at some random time. And also this will have to be pushed back by this at the right timing as well. And just these 2 observers will push it over at the right time, because that's at 8. And so this will be at 9, and push this up at the right time. this is off at 10, and so this will push the pistons up to make them arrive here at 10 ticks, and so they can do their 1 game tick pulse. Okay, that should be the entire thing. Bam. Perfect. That is the bottom hipsters explained in the most amount of detail I think I can. So now we can move on to the top hipsters, which I'll explain over here first. So what we're going to do first is push these blocks in for the closing, and then power this at 6 game ticks, and then this one will just get powered at 9 because this input will be pre-powered. Same thing as on the bottom helper triples. Only difference is that this thing gets pushed in like at 2 game ticks instead of 0, which is not really relevant. So anyways, first thing is we need this thing to depower at 2 game ticks. This one will depower at 5. And then we'll have a double pulse here, which depowers at 9 game ticks. Because this piston will arrive at 8 after this depowers at 5. 1 game tick pulse, 9 game ticks off. Then this will depower at 12 game ticks at the same time that this gives a 2 game tick pulse at 12 game ticks as well. So this kind of has enough block vent. And this is turning off with the repeater as well, so that makes it easier. And then this piston right here will be able to push at 7.5 ticks. And so this gives a 1 game tick pulse because we're powering its input from 7 to 8 ticks. And then I'm going to have, because this was powered from 7 to 8, and then this will be powered from 8 to 9. And this will turn off at 9 here. We're going to give this a 0 tick at 10.5 ticks. And then these inputs are kind of chained together. And so this will have a repeater that's getting powered at 10.5 with a 0 ticks, which means it's going to turn on 11.5 and off at 12.5 ticks. And then this will just get a double pulse. So that's the exact same timings, and that's the ones that were used. They're not the exact same timings as the bottom hipsters, but they're the ones that are the easiest to use, so that's the ones that we used. So most of these timings are pretty free to get. But first we need to add this input here. We're going to use targets for this one, and we're going to have 2 updater pistons right there with their backs against each other. And targets like this. We can't use no blocks here because other than that it would be locational which of these pistons or the one behind these targets powers first. So don't do that. So for the closing, as you can see, this is not happening at 6 ticks. Or sorry, at 6 game ticks. It's not happening. So we just have to do it manually, but that's fine. So just block here. So block there, hopper right here. And quite literally just like the most low IQ toggle that you've ever seen. Right here. And that just powers it straight up at 6 game ticks. And then this will come in at 7 game ticks and keep it locked. So it's not just getting powered randomly. So, and also this will turn on at 9 because this doesn't go down. So it's good enough. So that's the entire closing because we already have this guy that goes and turns these on at 2 game ticks. That's the closing, and I'm not going to demonstrate this yet because this gets a whole bunch of random pulses and I don't want to reset it. So the coolest thing we can do is just get the double pulse here, which is very easy. So what we're going to do is have a rail here and use this right here to retract a log and leaf like this. And so this right here is going to be a pulse that turns on at 3 and off at 5 to these targets. And then this double pulse is going to be used to retract these blocks here at 9 game ticks. And so this will go all the way up and then get retracted at 12 by these guys. So a lot of stuff should be happening. The first block goes all the way up and then gets retracted. And so these the pulses here will get blocked when this big extender goes down. So don't have to worry about those ones. And then for that extender, we're only going to have one input for it. There's going to be this double slider. If I can find the glass blocks, which is, they are literally right underneath me, but I'm going to go to my inventory anyways to grab them. So glass blocks there, And then this will power this back to a double pulse. And this is useful for like only the last move. This double pulse is actually not really used in very much, and it's actually toggled with this log here. So when we power this over on the closing, this gets blocked, by the way, and the only reason why we power this over on the closing is so we can just extend this once on the opening, which is going to go from this side to this side, and then the last pulse for the double slider is literally just going to come from this, and so this will double slide and retract all the way back up to here. So this is already in place, so this slides over on the closing. This log gets retracted so it doesn't go back. And so we need to power this piston at 5 ticks. So this powers at 6 to push everything down at the right time. So what we do is have this here, and then this to generate another extra 1 tick of delay. And so you can see when on the closing, this is only like 4 ticks. But on the opening, this has to start retracting, so it's 5. So this pushes over at 5. So that will push everything down and then pull it back up again. And actually, if we test this right now, these pistons will just get pushed over, which is not preferable. So what we're going to do is just build the double extender that pushes everything down. So this is actually a really cool thing that we found, is that if we have this kind of thing, which gives a 0 tick and a 2 game tick pulse in succession, we can push this over here to this block, and this gives a 2 game tick pulse, which pushes it down. I can't really demonstrate. I guess I'll just demonstrate it here. So it like gives a 2 game tick pulse to this, and then 2 game tick pulse here, and that retracts this block here. And then if we 0 tick this, it will power this repeater line at the right time as well. So it just kind of like goes down and back up. Let me power these like so, and then I'll demonstrate what I mean when I actually build the circuit. So this 0 tick is a little bit annoying to get because all of this block event, we need at least like a 3 block event delay thing, which we can actually fit in here with this guy right here. And you can go around and place these observers like that. And so this is the right timing. So we need this to push over to power at 7. And you can see that does happen. This is a 2-tick repeater. And so 4, 5, 6. Oh, sorry, 3, 4, 5. And then this takes 2 ticks, so that's 7. And then this goes around here. And this is 7.5 ticks to this. And so this is 10.5, I think. Wait, no. This is 9.5. This is not 7.5. This is 6.5. My bad. So this power is at 9.5, and since this only takes 2 game ticks to respond on this side, on this edge to get the 0 tick, this will have a 0 tick that turns off at 10.5. And then if this entire line powers at 10.5, these repeaters will power at 11.5 with a 2 game tick pulse. So now if I power these observers like this, you can see it'll go down and back up. So you can kind of see, oops, activate it too fast. So like that. That's what's going to happen. And then you just use the double slider to retract it back. All right, that should actually be the entire the entire top hipsters done. So you should see this happening. There you go. And retract it all the way back up. That should actually be the entire door done now. You can unblock everything finally. My voice has finally started to go after talking to myself for about 3 hours. Actually, it's only been 2 hours. And there it is. That is the door, all completed and explained for your viewing pleasure or displeasure. Kind of depends on how you look at it. Perfect. So that's the door. Hope you all enjoyed this epic video of this door that's been broken for like 8 months or something. I don't know how long it's been since they changed sand, but yeah, thanks for watching.